topic is the recent elections, the elections of 2007 in Nigeria. And of course, we have with us to talk about the recent elections and the implications for the continent of Africa, Dr. LMadu2. And of course, Dr. LMadu2, before we had our first commercial break, we promised that we'd give you an opportunity to talk about the implications for this particular election for the continent of Africa. And let's give you an opportunity to do that now.
Well, these elections are very significant and very important. As I've previously stated, this is the first time in the history of the country that one civilian government is handing over to another. Nigeria is the most populous black country in Africa, probably the most populous black country in the world, with a conservative estimate at this population to be between 140 and 150 million, with a huge supply of oil. About 15% of the oil that comes to this country comes from Nigeria. So it has a very big role to play. In fact, it's supposed to be the leader of Africa. So in that regard, what happens in Nigeria is very important. For example, this is, like I stated before, is the first civilian-to-civilian handover of power. But smaller African countries have undergone that process before. Nigeria should have been the first. For example, Botswana has been having, successive elections where one civilian transfers power to the other. The last one just occurred when Ketumile Masire handed over power to Festus Mohai. In Mozambique, you've had a civilian-to-civilian transfer of power. The last one was from President Chisano to the current president, Guebuza. In neighboring Benin Republic, they've had successive transfers of civilian to civilian. Nisoforo Soglo lost election to Kereku, transferred power peacefully. Ghana has undergone the same process. Mali has undergone the same process. So why not Nigeria, that's supposed to be the leader?
Is late in terms of really getting around to
absolutely, absolutely. And that's why I emphasized initially that in as much as the people in the country are angry about the elections, but at least the saving grace is that you have at least a historic moment. A civilian is handing over to under civilian. So that's very important. Now, if stability, comes to Nigeria, then the whole of West Africa will also experience the same, because whenever Nigeria sneezes, every other country in that region, catches cold. So that's very important. And the United States and European countries need Nigeria's oil. So it's also in their interest to see that there's stability in the country. In fact, if you look at the foreign media, most of the congratulations to the incoming president has been from members of the European Union, the United States, and other countries, even though they condemn the election.
Nigeria doing well.
Exactly, at least that there's stability, no violence, and all that. Most of these countries have billions of investments in the country, in oil, in infrastructure, etc., etc. And so they will want to see a country that is stable, so that their investments, can have good returns. All those are the interests. And moreover, most of the region, West African region, cannot afford to have an unstable Nigeria, where you have refugees pouring into their countries. So all these things are very important for there to be, a sustainable democracy in the country.
And so this is what you mean when you talk about the stability of it, that democracy can work well, what about the economic situations in reference to, and you've talked about that on a number of occasions, but you talk about all this wealth and et cetera, but Nigeria, in terms, I would imagine, per capita income, is one of the poor countries in Africa. Well, it's not as well off as it ought to be. What about that kind of situation? How do you deal with that?
Well, I think that would be some of the challenges of the incoming president. The outgoing president has, tried to introduce some reforms into the economy, which didn't go very far. So the incoming president will have a whole lot of economic challenges. I think what he needs to do is do what Deng Xiaoping did in China in 1978. When he came to power, he introduced what he called the four modernizations. Choosing 4 sectors of the economy that has to be modernized within a time period. That's what ushered China into its present economic prosperity. So I think the current incoming president has to, you know, have what I might call a five modernizations, you know, to modernize the economy. A, modernizing the infrastructure. You know, B, healthcare. C, education. You know, D, infrastructure. And 5, tourism. These 5, you know, key sectors of the economy need modernization. And I think if they are modernized within a specific period of time, then the country can be able to sustain democracy because the people will be satisfied and happy. Then you don't have people agitating. Right now, it's not the case. For example, electricity. Constant shortage of electricity. You cannot have your economy develop when half of the time people don't have electricity to operate. Water, the same. The roads, the same. So that's what I mean by modernizing the infrastructure. Absolutely. If the president can, you know, have a blueprint for making sure that the country has adequate electricity supply, adequate water supply, you know, good roads, then he has accomplished some, even if it's in 4 years. B, agriculture. That sector is neglected. It's not seen as a job. Rather, you know, it's not seen as a profession.
Yeah,
absolutely. Once in a while, the president comes on TV, you know, Operation Feed the Nation. Well, you eat 3 times a day, not once, you know. So they have to pay attention to modernizing the agricultural production of the country. That's why you have so many elephant projects in Africa. A whole lot of factories that were built, cigarette factories, sugar factories, but you don't have the agricultural base to sustain those industries. So you find out that cigarettes manufactured in Nigeria,
the tobacco
or sugar manufactured in Nigeria cost 10 times.
Because tobacco is not grown there.
Absolutely, exactly. Tobacco
and sugar is not grown there, even though the geography for sugar and tobacco is almost excellent, even in spite of what you might think about sugar, about tobacco, but nevertheless, that's not grown there, and that's a real problem.
Absolutely. So they have to end up importing those things. Then it costs 10 times to, you know, the price than what is imported. So you find out that you have to have an agricultural base in order to have an industrial revolution.
Good. And of course, Dr. LMadu, let us make preparations for the second commercial break, but essentially that's the information that we want you to give us in reference to what is going on in Nigeria and the implications that this has. And we'll take a short break, and when we come back during this last segment, that'll give you an opportunity not only to continue this conversation, but also to bring in some other things in terms of the United States and the world community in reference to this particular issue. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.